Many local variants of the Greek alphabet were employed in ancient Greece during the Archaic and early Classical periods, until they were replaced by the classical 24-letter alphabet that is the standard today, around 400 BC. All forms of the Greek alphabet were originally based on the shared inventory of the 22 symbols of the Phoenician alphabet, with the exception of the letter Samek, whose Greek counterpart she was used only in a subgroup of Greek alphabets, and with the common addition of upsilon for the vowel u. The local, so-called epicoric, alphabets differed in many ways. In the use of the consonant symbols chi, phi and psi, in the use of the innovative long vowel letters, in the absence or presence of eta in its original consonant function, in the use or non-use of certain archaic letters, and in many details of the individual shapes of each letter. The system now familiar as the standard 24-letter Greek alphabet was originally the regional variant of the Ionian cities in Asia Minor. It was officially adopted in Athens in 403 BC and in most of the rest of the Greek world by the middle of the 4th century BC. Aspirate and consonant cluster symbols. A basic division into 4 major types of epicoric alphabets is commonly made according to their different treatment of additional consonant letters. For the aspirated consonants and consonant clusters of Greek, these 4 types are often conventionally labeled as green, red, light blue, and dark blue types, based on a color-coded map in a seminal 19th-century work on the topic, Studien zur Geschichte des Griechischen Alphabets by Adolf Kirchhoff. The green type is the most archaic and closest to the Phoenician. The red type is the one that was later transmitted to the West and became the ancestor of the Latin alphabet, and bears some crucial features characteristic of that later development. The blue type is the one from which the later standard Greek alphabet emerged. Upsilon is also derived from WAW type, uses no additional letters beyond the Phoenician set, and typically also goes without chi. Thus, the aspirated plosives p, k are spelled either simply as pi and kappa respectively, without a distinction from unaspirated p, k, or as digraphs pi eta, kappa eta. Likewise, the clusters ps, ks are simply spelled pi sigma, kappa sigma. This is the system found in Crete and in some other islands in the southern Aegean, notably Thera, Melos and Anafi. The red type also lacks Phoenician-derived shifa, ks, but instead introduces a supplementary sign for that sound combination at the end of the alphabet. In addition, the red alphabet also introduced letters for the aspirates, phi equals p, and psi equals k. Note that the use of chi in the red set corresponds to the letter x in Latin, while it differs from the later standard Greek alphabet, where chi stands for k, and psi stands for ps. Only phi for p is common to all non-green alphabets. The red type is found in most parts of central mainland Greece, as well as the island of Euboea, and in colonies associated with these places, including most colonies in Italy. The light blue type still lacks chi, and adds only letters for p and k. Both of these correspond to the modern standard alphabet. The light blue system thus still has no separate letters for the clusters ps, ks. In this system, these are typically spelled phi sigma and chi sigma, respectively. This is the system found in Athens and several Aegean islands. The dark blue type, finally, is the one that has all the consonant symbols of the modern standard alphabet. In addition to phi and chi, it also adds psi and chi. This system is found in the cities of the Ionian Dodecapolish, Knidos in Asia Minor, and in Corinth and Argos on the northeastern Peloponnese. Eta and h. The letter eta had 2 different functions, both derived from the name of its Phoenician model, Heth. The majority of Greek dialects continued to use it for the consonant h, similar to its Phoenician value. However, the consonant h was progressively lost from the spoken language, and in those dialects where this had already happened early on in the Archaic period, eta was instead used to denote the long vowel, which occurred next in its name and was thus, in the h-less dialects, its natural acrophonic value. Early Silotic dialects include Eastern Ionic, the Aeolic dialect of Lesbos, as well as the Doric dialects of Crete and Elis. The distribution of vocalic eta and e differs further between dialects, because the Greek language had a system of three distinct e-like phonemes: the long open mid, the long close mid, e, and the short vowel, e. In the Silotic dialects of Asia Minor and adjacent eastern Aegean islands, as well as Crete, vocalic eta was used only for. In a number of Aegean islands, notably Rhodes, Melos, Thera, and Paros, it was used both for h and for, without distinction. In Knidos, a variant letter was invented to distinguish the two functions. Eta was used for h and for. In South Italian colonies, especially Taras, after c. 400 BC, a similar distinction was made between eta for and for h. This latter symbol was later turned into the diacritic sign of the Spiritus Asper by the Alexandrine grammarians. In Naxos the system was slightly different. Here, too, the same letter was used for h and for a long vowel, but only in those cases where a long e-like sound had arisen through raising from older a, not, as other users of vocalic eta did, also for the older, inherited from Proto-Greek. This probably means that while in the dialects of other eta users the old and new long e had already merged in a single phoneme, the raising sound in Naxos was still distinct both from a and, hence probably an a-like sound. Yet another distinction was found in a group of cities in the northeast of the Peloponnese, most notably Corinth. Here, it was not the open mid that was distinguished among the three e sounds, but the closed mid e. The normal letter epsilon was used exclusively for the latter, while a new special symbol stood both for short e and for. Yet another variation of the system is found in neighboring Tiryns. It uses the letter forms of the Corinthian system, versus e, but with the functional values of the classic eta versus epsilon system. Archaic letters. During the Archaic period, this includes most of mainland Greece, as well as Euboea and Crete. In Athens and in Naxos it was apparently used only in the register of poetry. Elsewhere, i.e., in most of the Aegean islands and the east, the sound with was already absent from the language. The shape of the letter varies locally and over time. The most common early form is. Over time, it developed in analogy with epsilon, becoming either the classical f or. Early Crete had an archaic form, or a variant with the stem bent sideways. Conjectured that san originally stood for a voiced z sound, and that those Doric dialects that kept san instead of sigma may have had such a pronunciation of per second. Roger Woodard, professor of classics at the University at Buffalo, hypothesizes that san may originally have stood for ts. In any case, each dialect tended to use either san or sigma to the exclusion of the other, and while the earliest Abecedaria listed both letter shapes separately in their separate alphabetic positions, later specimens from the 6th century onwards tend to list only one of them. San was used in Argos until the end of the 6th century, in Sicyon until c. 500, in Corinth until the first half of the 5th century, and in Crete for some time longer. Sicyon kept the sign as a local emblem on its coins. Copper. The archaic letter copper, used for the back allophone of k, before back vowels o, u, was originally common to most epicoric alphabets. It began to drop out of use from the middle of the 6th century BC. Some of the Doric regions, notably Corinth, Argos, Crete and Rhodes, kept it until the 5th century BC. Innovative letters. A few letters have arisen from innovative letter distinctions, most of them for local alphabets. Omega. The new letter omega to denote the long half-open sound was invented first in the East, in the Ionian cities of Asia Minor, at some time before 600 BC. It was created by breaking up the closed circle of the omicron, initially near the side. The letter was subsequently turned upright and the edges curled outwards. The Dorian city of Knidos, as well as a few Aegean islands, namely Paros, Thasos and Melos, chose the exact opposite innovation, using a broken-up circle for the short and a closed circle for the long o. Sampi. Some Ionian cities used a special letter, alphabetically ordered behind omega, for a sibilant sound in positions where other dialects had either sigma sigma or tau tau. This symbol later dropped out of alphabetic use but survived in the form of the numeral symbol Sampi. As an alphabetic character, it has been attested in the cities of Miletus, Ephesus, Halicarnassos, Erythrae, Teos, in the island of Samos, in the Ionian colony of Massilia, and in Kyzikos, in Pontic Mesembria, on the Black Sea coast of Thrace. It was used on coins, which were marked with the abbreviation of the city's name, spelled mu epsilon alpha. The sound denoted by this letter was a reflex of the Proto-Greek consonant clusters *kj, *kj, *tj, *tj, or *tw, and was probably an intermediate sound during the phonetic change from the earlier plosive clusters towards the later per second sound, possibly an affricate similar to ts. Arcadian San, the Arcado-Cypriot dialect of Mantinea, in one attested document, used an innovative letter similar to existed side by side with another distinctive form. It has been surmised that in this dialect the sound with may have changed to labiodental v in some environments. The F-shaped letter may have stood for the new v sound, while the special shaped form signified those positions where the old with sound was preserved. Boeotian raised a special letter for a variant realization of the short e sound, was briefly used in the Boeotian city of Thespia in the late 5th century BC. It occurred in the place of normal epsilon whenever the sound stood before another vowel. Since its shape suggests a compromise form between an epsilon and an iota, it is thought that it denoted a raised allophone, approaching I. It is attested in only one document, a set of grave stelae from 424 BC. Glyph shapes. Many of the letters familiar from the classical Greek alphabet displayed additional variation in shapes, with some of the variant forms being characteristic of specific local alphabets. The form of zeta generally had a straight stem. She typically had a vertical stem. This remained a distinguishing feature in those varieties that also had san. The top of pi could be curved rather than angular, approaching a Latin p. The crooked shape of sigma could be written with different numbers of angles and strokes. Besides, the classical form with 4 strokes was commonly found, and was particularly characteristic of some mainland Greek varieties, including Attic and several red alphabets. The C-like lunate form of sigma that was later to become the standard form in late antiquity and Byzantine writing did not yet occur in the archaic alphabets. The letter iota had 2 principal variants: the classical straight vertical line, and a crooked form with 3, 4 or more angular strokes. The crooked type was the older form, and remained common in those varieties where it could not be confused with sigma because sigma was absent in favor of san. The letters gamma and lambda had multiple different forms that could often be confused with each other, as both are just an angle shape that could occur in various positions. C-like forms of gamma were common in many mainland varieties and in the West, where they inspired the italic C. L-like shapes of lambda were particularly common in Nubia, Attica and Boeotia. Achaean colonies had a gamma in the form of single iota-like vertical stroke. The letter alpha had different minor variants depending on the position of the middle bar, with some of them being characteristic of local varieties. The letter beta had the largest number of highly divergent local forms. Besides the standard form, there were forms as varied as and, kappa, nu, omicron and tau displayed little variation and few or no differences from their classical forms. All letters could additionally occur in a mirrored form, when text was written from right to left, as was frequently done in the earliest period. Important local alphabets. Old Attic Athens, until the late 5th century BC, used a variant of the light blue alphabet, with chi sigma 4 Ks, and phi sigma 4 Ps. Epsilon was used for all three sounds e, and omicron was used for all if, o. Eta was used for the consonant h. Among the characteristics of Athens writing were also some variant local letter forms, some of which were shared with the neighboring alphabet of Euboea, a form of lambda that resembled a Latin L. By the late 5th century, use of elements of the Ionic alphabet side by side with this traditional local alphabet had become commonplace in private writing, and in 403 BC, this new system was subsequently also called the Euclidean alphabet, after the name of the archon Euclides who oversaw the decision. Euboean. The Euboean alphabet was used in the cities of Eretria and Chalkish and in related colonies in southern Italy, notably in Cumae and in Pitecuse. It was through this variant that the Greek alphabet was transmitted to Italy, where it gave rise to the old Italic alphabets, including Etruscan and ultimately the Latin alphabet. Some of the distinctive features of the Latin as compared to the standard Greek script are already present in the Euboean model. The Euboean alphabet belonged to the Western type. It had chi equals Ks, and psi equals K. Like most early variants, it also lacked imago, and used eta for the consonant H, rather than for the vowel. It also kept the archaic letters digamma equals, with an upper equals K. San equals per second, was not normally used in writing, but apparently still transmitted as part of the alphabet, because it occurs in Abecedaria found in Italy and was later adopted by Etruscan. Like Athens, Euboea had a form of lambda that resembled a Latin L and a form of sigma that resembled a Latin S. Other elements foreshadowing the Latin forms include gamma, shaped like a pointed C, and rho, shaped like R, type as far as its treatment of P, K, PS, Ks, was concerned, but differed from the Ionic and Classical alphabet in several other ways. Corinth used san instead of sigma for per second, and retained upper for what was presumably a retracted allophone of K, before back vowels. As described above, it also had an uncommon system for marking its E sounds, with a beta-shaped letter used for E, and epsilon used only for long close E. For the consonant beta, in turn, Corinth used the special form. The letter iota was written like a sigma. Summary table. The following summary of the principal characteristic forms of representative local Greek scripts is based on the chapters on each dialect in Jeffery.